Hello everybody, and my name is Spoons Rattling, and welcome to another video where today we are covering a tier list, actually, for the boxes known as Start Collecting for the various factions of 40k. Or not Start Collecting, sorry. Old 40k coming at me. I mean Combat Patrol. The bigger boxes that replaced Start Collecting. We're going to rank them all on a tier list, give my opinions on each and every one of them, and see which we think are the best and which are the worst. So starting up, we have the Tyranids Combat Patrol, and I think the Tyranids Combat Patrol is good. It fits into the archetypical Combat Patrol. It's got your core troops, it's got a leader, it's got a muscle, and then an auxiliary unit. That's sort of the criteria I look for when ranking a Combat Patrol. Obviously, you've got the Winged Tyranid Prime as your leader. You've got the 20 Termagants. You've got the Barbgaunts, a Psychophage, and the Von Ryan's Leapers. I think this makes it an actually slightly above average Tyranid Combat Patrol in general. I don't think I'm going to put it all the way up in S tier, mainly because I think it's slightly held back. All the stuff's monopose. The Winged Tyranid Prime doesn't really have anyone to lead, which he doesn't. I don't even think he should have leader rules. I think he should be more of a lone op thing, but it is what it is. But I still think this is a great start for Tyranids. I'm talking the contents itself. I know this comes in the 40k Command Edition starter box, but I'm just talking purely how the actual the actual Combat Patrol stacks up content wise. Now we have the other end of this, the Combat Patrol Space Marines, the generic Space Marines. So this comes with the Infernus Marines, the Terminators, a Terminator Captain, and a Terminator Librarian. Now I'm a huge Terminator fan. I've made that very well known, but I'm not the biggest fan of this Combat Patrol. I think it lacks, it's a little old model count-wise. I think it should have included 10 Infernus Marines at the very least. But I think it's just slightly too sort of oddball, sort of everything in the kitchen sink. It's almost Terminator-themed, but then you have the Infernus Marines, and you have the spare Librarian walking around. I don't think it's terrible, and it's certainly an upgrade from last edition, which is a bunch of Phobos stuff in a box. And the Terminators are very good models, so I think that earns it probably a high C tier. I don't think it's offensively bad, but I don't think it's great either. I think they should have maybe swapped the Infernus Marines out for 10 Intercessors, and I think it would have been much better that way. Next up, we have the Grey Knights. Now, the Grey Knights, as a range, only have, 4 kits? You have your Terminators, your Strike Marines, your Nemesis, Grandmaster, Dread Knights, whatever they're called, and then, Caldor Drago and Brother Captain Stern. In terms of plastic kits, though, this has, I believe, all of them, because it has the Librarian, it has the Dread Knight, it has the Strike Marines, it has the Terminators, and I like all these models. The Dread Knight I'm so on, but even still, I think this is a pretty awesome Combat Patrol, composition-wise. It's got your muscle, it's got your core battle line unit, it's got your auxiliary unit, and it's got a character. It's got everything you could want. I think that earns it an A tier in my eyes. Next up, we have the Who's-em-a-Whatsits. These are the AdMech. So the AdMech Combat Patrol, I'm not, a vivid hater of this Combat Patrol or anything like that, but I'm not, in love with it, right? I'm not the biggest fan of the composition of the box. I think it's lacking muscle. And I'm not the biggest fan of the Taraxi, I believe they're called, with the sort of Da Vinci wings. So they don't do much for me. The horses are cool, but I think either the horses or the Taraxi should have been swapped out for an Honor Dragoon Crawler or Cataphront Breachers, like the old one. And I think that's probably going to put it near the bottom of C tier. So next up we have Genestealer Colts. Now, Genestealer Colts definitely got a big downgrade in terms of Combat Patrol, but I don't think this Combat Patrol is awful, composition-wise at least. You've got I really do like the hybrid Metamorphs. I've always thought they were really cool, so I'm glad to see they get the spotlight here. And then the Bikes and the Jackal Alphys and the Who's-em-a-Whatsits, not the Jackal Alphys, what's it called? The Ridge Runner. They're all great models. Genestealer Colts have fantastic models the whole way around. And I think it's fairly middle of the pack is what I would call it. It's not standout, it's not awful, it's just so-so. So next up we have the Orks Combat Patrol. Now this was a divisive one when it came out, and I understand why, but I think the thing with the Orks Combat Patrol is it's great value if you like Beast Snagas. If you don't, obviously it's not for you. Now I'm not there's some people that really vehemently hate the Beast Snagas, and I'm not really sure why. people call them like fantasy orcs in space, but they're really not that fantasy. They're using like bionic arms with guns, snappa claws, grenade launchers. Their squig hogs are almost all cyborgs. I never really got that like idea from them. And overall, I think it's a great box. I'm not the biggest fan of the Beast Boss model, but the rest of the models are fantastic. I think this is a great combat patrol. I'm probably going to put it near the top of A tier. It has everything I like, right? It's got a character, it's got the squig hogs for the muscle, and then you've got 20 boys. What more could you really want? I mean, that is a great Ork combat patrol the whole way around, in my opinion. I think I prefer the old one just because it had the Death Dread in it, but the old one had the monopose boys, which is nice as they look. They're monopose, right? They're fixed loadout. That's the biggest problem with them. Next up, we have another strong contender, Combat Patrol Chaos Demons. Now, this really should be Combat Patrol Khorne Demons, because that's all it is. And, well, I'm conflicted because, obviously, this is great for Khorne collectors, but not good for anyone else. But the thing with it is I don't know what else they could have done, right? To keep it a Combat Patrol-sized force, so a small, about a quarter of an army, you need to have some sort of balance to it. And unless they were going to do, like, one unit of each god and then, like, a demon prince or something, and that would have been a very weak combat patrol, because it probably would have been the lesser demons of those forces, and then a demon prince at the center, I really don't see what else they could have done, and I think I prefer overall the more focused Khorne Demons approach. Now, I am going to dock points for it for being mono god, but I think it's the best they could do. This is probably going to end up at the very top of B tier. It's really just held back from A tier from being mono god in an army that's, it's got the other three gods. So next up we have Combat Patrol Drukhari. Now this, I don't think will surprise anyone, is, in my opinion, the best combat patrol out. If you like Drukhari, buy this before it goes away and probably the end of next year. This combat patrol has your troopers, it has a transport in the Raider, and then it has the muscle of the Ravager for ranged firepower, and it has the Incubi for on-foot melee power, which is really, really good. Hold on, let me clear my throat. Sorry, I just had to clear my throat. So as I was saying, yeah, you've got the Raider, the Incubis, the Kabalite Warriors, your Archon, and then it's got a Ravager for ranged firepower. This is a fully rounded out army that is really solid, and I really enjoy it. And it's so tempting, it almost makes me want to get into Drukhari, but I've made a vow I'm not starting any other armies till I finish everything I have. So that's easy S tier, in my opinion, the best in the game, and fantastic the whole way around. So next up we have Combat Patrol Space Wolves. Now, this is from last edition, and it really shows, because this is a Combat Patrol that's Space Wolves, only really in name. It has the Space Wolves Battle Leader, which is a nice model, I'll say. But the Invictor Tactical Warsuit, the Reavers, and the Intercessors all don't really do much for me. The Invictor has, it's a little bit muscly, but it's a light vehicle, and not in the way that, say, like, an Impulsor is, which has its transport, and it can deliver something deadly. It's just sort of a medium skirmish vehicle, which I don't think it does much for me in terms of combat patrol, and overall, its theming is pretty weak. We're going to end up putting this probably, like, C tier. I probably like it a little more than the AdMech, but not by much. These share very similar problems in my mind. I'm not a big fan of the secondary and auxiliary units. Now, on the other side of that, the Elves keep winning, because the Eldar Combat Patrol, in my opinion, is fantastic, right? Farseer is the archetypical leader of Eldar, has been pretty much forever. Guardians are always nice to have, great for painting, and always are just usually useful just to camp around. And also, the new Guardian models are so fantastic, I love them. And then you have 6 Wind Riders, which I guess if you don't like jet bikes, this may not be for you, but you're playing Eldar. Like, chances are you like jet bikes. And I like the Wind Riders. They pack surprisingly powerful guns. They look cool. Overall great. And then you have a Wraith Lord in it, the Dreadnought equivalent, and I love Wraith Lords. This is up there with Drukhari, in my opinion. It's not as good value as Drukhari, which does knock its points a little bit. I think I'm going to put it in A tier, but it's going to be very high in A tier, no doubt in my mind. Very solid combat patrol. If you're collecting Eldar, I'd highly recommend picking this up. It's fantastic. Next up, we have the Combat Patrol Dark Angels, the new one. And Combat Patrol Dark Angels is an interesting one in some ways, and in other ways, it's slightly annoying. Overall, I'd say it's fine, but nothing standout. I like its overall composition, but it's held back by the character, in my opinion, right? So you've got your 10 intercessors. There's your core battle line. Always useful to have. Great to include in a combat patrol. You got 5 Hellblasters, guys with plasma guns. Wouldn't be Dark Angels without plasma guns. And then you have the Blade Guard veterans, which look sick for Dark Angels. You've got your robes, you've got your cool inner circle color schemes. But then it's a Gravis Captain as the main thing, which I think sucks because, well, there's no Gravis in the box, right? The Gravis Captain is very out of place. I really wish it was just like the Indomitus Captain or something. Overall, it's just very... That's what lets it down, in my opinion. It's like... It's 80% of the way there, or 75, right? Because you've got Intercessors, 25%. You've got your Hellblasters, 25%, and Blade Guard, 75%, or 25, 25, 25, 50, 75, and then the Captain in the last leg of the race lets it down, which I think drops this down to more of a sort of like middling B tier kind of combat patrol. I don't think it's bad. It's just held back by an odd character choice, in my opinion. Now, on the opposite end of Space Marines, we have the Combat Patrol Black Templars. Now, Black Templars Combat Patrol is very, very solid, in my opinion. You get your Impulsor, which is, the sort of the modern-day Rhino, if you will, which lets you transport your big, scary unit of Crusaders, basically. No, it doesn't let you transport them because it's not big enough. So there's some conflict here. But you have your Impulsor, which I suppose you would use with the Intercessors, and then you have your big fighty unit of Crusaders with the Marshal, right? All these models are fantastic. They're all great. The Intercessors are great baseline. The Crusader squad is great, sort of. It's the iconic Black Templars unit. And then the Marshal, I think, is a pretty solid model. He's definitely not my favorite Black Templars model, but he's very Black Templars. He's got his sort of Conan the Barbarian crown on. He's got his skeleton on his backpack. It's definitely a good combat patrol. Very solid. It, of course, comes with the Black Templar upgrades, which are really cool. Comes with all the relics. You can really kit this out with a lot of cool stuff. And overall, I'd say it's... Whoops, I did not mean to scroll there. Is definitely on sort of the upper echelon of what I would consider good combat patrols, because it includes, that upgrade sprue. So we're going to put this guy probably in the probably middle of A tier, I'd say. I don't think it's quite as solid as Orks, and let me put it Grey Knights above them. I don't think it's as solid as these top three, but it's in a similar vein to the Tyranids, right? It's very solid. It's got its auxiliaries. It's got an auxiliary unit. It's got the muscle. It's got the normal guys. It's got the captain. It's got everything you want. Now, next up, we have the Sisters Combat Patrol, and the Sisters Combat Patrol is definitely sort of a mixed bag compared to the old one, because it doesn't include quite as much, but it is a little bit more focused. The old Combat Patrol, it had the Penitent Engine, it had 3 Arcoflagellants, it had the 4 Repentia and a Superior, and it had the Monopose Sisters and the Rhino. This one, it's a little bit more focused. In terms of your character, you've got your Canoness, you've got your Battle Sister Squad, which is, of course, what I want to see in all of these, and you've got your Celestian Sacrosancts, which are cool ladies with swords and big maces. What's there not to like? There is something not to like, in my opinion, and that's the Arcoflagellants. Now, I don't think the Arcoflagellants are, like, ugly models in any way, but when I think Sisters, I definitely think more Sisters of Battle, the Immolator, the Redemptor, or not Redemptor, what's it called? The Pipe Organ Artillery Piece, you know the one. Celestian Sacrosancts, Zephyrim, Seraphim, those kind of things are what come to mind first. And the Penitent models, like the Arcoflagellants, don't, like, they're tertiary, right? They're not part of the main army. They're tagging along for the ride, and I know that in lore, yes, it makes sense. They fight alongside themselves all the time. They're all part of the Witch Hunters. But still, Arcoflagellants to me, they're just whatever, and I don't think they should have been in the Combat Patrol. I would have included a Rhino or an Immolator, something along those lines, or even Retributors, which would have been a great option. So overall, I think the Arcoflagellants hold this one back, though I still think it's going to be in sort of the upper B tier. Here's a really solid one. We got the Necrons. So the Necrons Combat Patrol is like, if this is the most, like, the standard every combat patrol should be held to, right? You've got your Overlord, the core HQ of the army. You've got your Scorpec Destroyers, an elite melee unit that can do a lot of damage. You've got Scarabs, which are useful secondary units. They're chaff, right? You've got Necron Warriors, the perfect guys to paint up and to be the backline of your army. And then the Canoptic Doomstalker is the bow on top, right? Awesome model, really powerful gun. It's good at shooting everything. So you've got everything in this box. You've got a little bit of melee, a little bit of shooting. You've got your core guys. You've got your chaff guys, and you've got the captain, and you've got the hero of the box. And it's all really solid. I think this puts the Necrons Combat Patrol in S tier in terms of just a place to start collecting Necrons from. This is about as solid as it gets, right? You've got everything you need. You've got basically, if you take an army, boil it down to its core essence, you would get this Combat Patrol because it's got all the roles filled. It's a very balanced box. I love it. Next up, we have the Imperial Guard Combat Patrol, and this is one that I think highlights why the Necron Combat Patrol is so good. So this one, you've got your 20 Cadians, your 2 field ordnance batteries, your command squad, and a sentinel. Now, overall, this isn't necessarily terrible, but what it lacks is a linchpin unit, in my opinion, right? So if you look at the old, like, say, start collecting Imperial Guard, right? Or like the Cadian Defense Force, they all included a Leman Russ, or a Chimera, or something like that. And I think that's what they should have included here, right? Maybe drop the Sentinel and the field ordnance batteries and include a Leman Russ. That would have not only been a little bit more iconic, but it would have added extra muscle, extra durability. It would have rounded it out a lot better because guardsmen are okay at shooting. They're good at killing infantry, especially with a command squad in tow, so they get their orders. But then you would have that, and then you could have the Leman Russ to do the heavy lifting, make it a Leman Russ Demolisher or something like that to really sort of tie up the box really well. So overall, this one's probably going to be more of like a C tier, I think. All the models are great. It's just it lacks that linchpin unit. Now here's one that I think actually does what the Imperial Guard were trying to do much better: the Tau. So the Tau Combat Patrol, I think, is actually a slightly better box than the last one, just because it's a little bit more core Tau. It's not all stealth suits, you know. So this one, it comes with the Pathfinders, which are your scouting units, your Fire Warriors, which are your standard guys, a Devilfish, which is your standard transport, and your Crisis Suit Commander, which is, I'd say, the sort of iconic HQ for the army, right? In terms of that, right, you don't have necessarily a single linchpin, but the commander in Crisis Suit, right, he carries a lot of firepower. He is no slouch when it comes to singular firepower. And then you have your Devilfish to transport your normal troopers, and then you have your Pathfinders to do some scouting, and they carry some heavy weapons. If they stance up in a building, they can shoot their marker lights and shoot their heavy weapons. So this is very similar to the Guard Combat Patrol, but done much better. It has that damage dealer, that central unit in the Crisis Suit, which really ties it all together. And the Devilfish acts as a good auxiliary unit, and the Scouts, and having 2 varieties of infantry is a little more interesting. I don't hold that against the Guard, because, I mean, what were they going to include? The Catachans, some of the most hideous models GW still sells. This one is definitely an A tier in my book. I'm going to put it just behind the Grey Knights, I think just because the Grey Knights include a little bit more, they include the entire range, and then we have the Orks and the Eldar. I'd say all of these are very close. None are too far ahead of each other. Really, all of these 4 could be swapped around. And next up, we have another solid one, the Chaos Space Marines. So the old Chaos Space Marines box was very solid. Dark Apostle was a little bit of an odd choice for a leader, but still very solid. And this one I'm still a little iffy on the Master of Possession as its leader. But you've got your Possessed, so you've got your Muscle. You've got your Chaos Space Marines, so you've got your battle line guys to do your paint schemes and figure out how to paint your army. You've got the Master of Possession, which is a really cool looking character. He's got the evil magic. He's got that chaos aesthetic, which is good for your archetypal Chaos Marines. Same with the Possessed. Then you've got some cultists, some grunts that most armies will use in some extent. Well, not everyone wants to use the cultists. I think cultists are well liked by Chaos players in general. I know I like them. And on the whole, I think this is a very solid box. Now, it doesn't have anything super standout that makes it, really flashy, or it has some sort of central unit, but I think the Possessed are cool enough, they're very chaosy, that this definitely holds it and puts it into that upper echelon alongside these sort of the best of A tiers. So the line here would be between Combat Patrol, Black Templars, and Tyranids, and the rest are all above them. Oh, okay, so Leagues of Votann. Leagues of Votann Combat Patrol, I think, is pretty solid. I like the Leagues of Votann quite a lot. I've painted mine as Power Miners. I did a video on that. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that video. The Combat Patrol solid. It comes with a Call, the Bikers. Then it includes some Chthonian Berserks, which I really like. They look really cool with their plasma axes or big hammers. And then you've got the Hearthkin Warriors, which I think are my favorite models from the range, honestly, with the exception of the Brokir Thunderkin. And this, it has your basic guys. It has your damage dealers in the Berserks. It has the Central HQ and the Call, and it's got the Bikers. This is a solid lineup, and I think definitely does earn it sort of in the echelons of A tier up alongside the other great ones. We're just swinging it out of the park with each and every one of these. We've got Combat Patrol World Eaters next. Now, World Eaters is one of the best combat patrols around, simply because it gets it right. You've got your Lord on Juggernaut, Lord on Juggernaut is sort of an oddball in the army as it is, but is the central HQ of the army, excluding Angron. And then you get 20 Berserkers. And that's, like, when I think World Eaters, what do you think of? You think of a bunch of Berserkers running forward in a huge mob. And what does this let you do? Have a bunch of Berserkers running forward in a huge mob, and you've got your Jackals in the backline, some hangers-on, the guys that end up in the back of photographs running after the Khorne Berserkers. This is a great combat patrol. I think it honestly does, this is probably our next S tier. I don't think it's as well-rounded as Necrons or Drukhari, but that just comes from the fact that World Eaters aren't a well-rounded army. This is as good as it's going to get for a combat patrol, really. I don't see any way you could improve this unless they introduced a Chaos Lord on foot for them, which would be better than the Juggernaut Lord. It would just fit in better. Oh boy, we're coming up to a stinker right here, and not in a good way, not in a nurgly way. This combat patrol sucks. Let's go over it. You get your 30 Poxwalkers. You've got 7 Plague Marines, a Biologist Putrefier, the guy with the the billows, I want to call it, guy with the big proboscis coming off his helmet. And then the weirdest part of it all, Typhus is in this box. Now, Typhus, undeniably an iconic character of the Death Guard. He was there only, or one of their unique models for, some on 25 years. He's not that he can't, he should be part of the army, right? But in the Combat Patrol, I don't see it. This guy should not have been here. This should have been just a Chaos. This should have been, any other character, really. I think this does kind of come back to the fact that the Death Guard, I don't know if the Death Guard necessarily have, a traditional Lord archetype, but I just don't think it makes sense for Typhus to be here, really. And the main problem is just the horde of zombies. I get there's people who like Poxwalkers, and for Typhus it makes sense to have a lot of Poxwalkers, given his whole, his just the way he is, right? He leads the I can't remember the name of his fleet, but it's filled with Poxwalkers, right? And it's just really odd that that's the way they went. It doesn't even, it has Plague Marines, but where's the muscle in this army, right? That's my main thing, right? There's no central muscle unit. Well, Plague Marines have, their own fightiness to them. They're certainly not, they are not what I would consider a linchpin unit in a lot of ways. What I would have included instead of Typhus was probably just the normal Plague Marine champion, and just use him as a Chaos Lord for Nurgle, right? Is what I would have run him as in this combat patrol. Or, the Foul Blight Spawn, really. Just anything except Typhus. Not only does Typhus have nothing to lead, he doesn't really have... it's just weird to have an epic hero in this box. It means it's not useful to buy multiples of, which is already not helped by the fact that there's a million Poxwalkers in here. This is easily one of the worst combat patrols in the game, in my opinion. I really dislike it. Now, on the other side of that, Custodes Combat Patrol. One of the best for a multitude of reasons. Now, this may sound weird, but I was never a big fan of the old Combat Patrol because it included all those Sisters of Silence. I'm going to be real. I may be weird here, but when I want to play Custodes, which I don't even play my Custodes anymore, but when I want to play Custodes, what do I want to do? I want to run big units of guys in shiny armor with robes and big axes. I do not care about some discount Sisters of Battle that their models are ugly. I'm just going to say it. I don't think the Sisters of Silence models are good. So this, which includes a Blade Champion, cool guy with a big sword who's leading from the front. This has Wardens, this has Terminators, this has normal Guardians. This is the perfect box. The only thing that's left out is jet bikes, but jet bikes are something that I think should just be an expansion, right? This is your core army, and it's about half your army in a box. Value-wise, it's probably the best in the game. Easily one of the best. I'm putting it just ahead of the Necrons. And flipping back around again, like I can't stop swinging like a pendulum, we have Thousand Sons. I detest this combat patrol with all of my might. Now, this came out in 9th edition, and was a huge downgrade from Start Collecting Thousand Suns. But here's the main thing with this, is it doesn't include Rubric Marines, which is just weird in itself. But there is a little bit of an explanation as to why. Last edition Combat Patrol was supposed to give you 500 points of models, so you would have a Combat Patrol-sized force. Now, obviously, it's more angled towards the game, but let me explain why this sort of came to be, and why I've sort of come to peace with it, even though I still hate it so much. Is the Rubric Marine box is spread across enough sprues, and the way Rubric Marines work, you have your one sorcerer, right? Most Space Marine boxes can be split in two, right? You can make 2 squads of 5, but with Rubric Marines, you can't do that. There's only enough parts for one sorcerer. So they kind of had to either include one 10-man block of Rubric Marines, which was something like 235 points, or even more in that regard. So if they included that, it would have had to have been Rubric Marines, a sorcerer, or the guy here who's summoning screamers, and then like a Hellbrute or something. Which wouldn't be much better, but I think it would be better than this, because this just, it doesn't feel right. The Scarab Occults are some of my favorite models. They're Terminators. I love Scarab Occult Terminators, but they should not be the star of your Start Collecting box. Rubric Marines should be. That's what really holds this back, and I think it's part of the reason I hate this even more than I do Death Guard. I'm tempted to give this I'm going to give this its own row, because I just think it's an abomination. Add row below. We're going to call this, we're going to make this blue, and we're going to, oh wait, no, this needs to be, we'll keep this like green. Yeah, stinky green. This is going to be blue, and this is going to be, we're just going to call this the Thousand Sun. This Thousand Suns. This is just not a good combat patrol. I'm not a big Zangor guy. I don't think Zangors are that cool. Even playing Space Marine 2, like when I played Space Marine 2, right, I wanted to finish my Tyranids. I found the Rubric Marines really cool. You know what I didn't fall in love with? Zangors. Because Zangors, to me, are just kind of lame. Like, I don't really like Zangors that much. Anyways, that's enough ranting about that. Thousand Suns Combat Patrol. It sucks. That's the long and the short of it. Next up, we have the new Combat Patrol Blood Angels. Now, this one, I think, looks weird. Like, visually looks weird. But I think it's actually a really solid Combat Patrol, which is slightly strange to say. But let me explain, right? You've got the Blood Angels Captain. Cool model. Very, he's customizable. It's got what you want. Assault Intercessors, very good. Standard battle line guys. They like to get into close combat, like Blood Angels should. And then you've got 6 Sanguinary Guard. Now, this is where the weirdness comes in. Most combat patrols attempt, at least, to include 4 units. If you look at that, that's true in most of them. If we look at, say, Drukhari, Archon, Incubi, Cabalites, Raider, Ravager, that's 5. But still. Custodes, Blade Champion, Wardens, Terminators, Guardians, Necrons, Overlord, Warriors, Scorpek, Canoptic Doomstalker, and Scarabs. Combat Patrol, there are other ones like this, like World Eaters, 20 Khorne Berserkers, Juggernaut, Cultists. But then if you go back, you look at most of these, there's some attempt, excluding sort of the Horde armies, like the Tyranids or the Orks, or the Guard, right? They try to include 4 units in some variety. Dark Angels, Captain, Blade Guard, Hellblasters, Intercessors. Sisters of Battle, Canoness, Sisters, Celestians, and then who are they called? Arcoflagellants. Right, that's the general theme. But this one only includes 3 units, and the numbers aren't huge, which I think is what sets it off weird. But you still do technically get 4 units. Captain, Assault Intercessor, Sanguinary Guard. And that's what makes it so weird. Like, visually it looks weird. Like, why is there so few units in here? But it still, like, fits generally. It's just a bit of an oddball. And I still think it's a solid box. It's certainly more Blood Angels than the last one was. And overall, I like it. I think, in general, people overreacted to the Sanguinary Guard. They look the same. I'm going to be real. They just don't have the wings, which it does suck, I'll admit. But, I mean, they've still got the molded chest armor. They've got the death masks on. They've got jump packs. They've got blue shiny swords. They're Sanguinary Guard. But I think even... Okay, that was a very long rant to say that this is a slightly odd combat patrol, but I still think it's pretty solid. I'm going to put this probably sort of near the Black Templars, but above the Black Templars, just because I think the Sanguinary Guard are a better fit than, say, the Impulsor is. Overall, I think it's a fine combat patrol. It's just an odd one. It's the red-headed stepchild of the combat patrol family. It's weird, but it still has redeeming qualities. Now, we have one that... I'm going to have to pull this up. This is a very strange combat patrol, because Imperial Agents is a very strange army. Just, like, full stop. So, this includes 20 Arbites. That's fine. I think that works as your standard Imperial Agents, basic troopers, right? They look cool. They're decked out in black. They've got their shotguns. They look cool, right? Then you've got some Inquisitorial henchmen. All right, we're still doing fine. Those guys make sense. They're a retinue for your leader. And then it includes an Eversor assassin, which I think does fit as well, because, well, I'm going to be real. The main reason people like Agents of the Imperium is because of the assassins, because they're cool. And then, finally, the character here was a Ministorum priest. This is sort of a Dark Angel situation, where it feels like it's almost there, but it's slightly confused. Like, which of these characters is supposed to be the warlord? Well, it really shouldn't be the assassin, because they're not warlords, and, well, Ministorum priest, that's like an auxiliary character. That's like making an apothecary the sergeant, or the leader of your box. And who does the Ministorum priest go with? I mean, those are Inquisitorial henchmen. Shouldn't there be an Inquisitor here? But then you remember, the Inquisitor's included in the Starstriders box. So where... This is just an odd army, fittingly enough, has a very odd combat patrol. And I'm trying to think of who would make a better leader for this box, and I'm honestly at a bit of a loss. Because the Inquisitors are all named characters, they're really kind of boned. Like, who are they supposed to use? Like, the only generic characters are the like assassins and the the navigator and the Ministorum priests. So, like, what are they supposed to do? And I think what they should have done, right, is they should have swapped out what are they called? The Inquisitorial henchmen for the Rogue Trader entourage. Because I think a Rogue Trader and his posse would fit better as a leader unit than this priest. Because, I mean, a Rogue Trader, yeah, of course. The Rogue Trader, that's like one of the biggest reasons people run Imperial Agents is because they want to use a Rogue Trader. I mean, Rogue Trader is where 40k started. 40k Rogue Trader. But this box, it's not bad. It's just like, it's weird, is the best way I can put it. I'm rambling. This box is driving me insane. Let me take a final look at it, but it just is really, really weird. It feels slightly disorganized, which for the army, I guess, it's weird, because every time I come up with something, I'm like, wow, that is weird. But then I remember, yeah, Imperial Agents is a weird army. I can't quite place my finger on it, but something about this combat patrol feels wrong. It's really, really weird. But overall, I think core contents-wise, it's probably middle of the pack. Probably right around here. It doesn't have any huge muscle units. Well, I say that, but there's the Eversor, and the Eversor assassin can just annihilate a lot of things in the game. So he kind of acts as the muscle, and then you've got all your cops, and you've got your henchmen, and you've got your priest. It's a weird box, and I think it's more middle B tier, really. Alright, so that was very insane, and I bet everyone stopped watching once I started rambling about the insanity of the Imperial Agents army. But overall, this is my tier list. If you think I placed anything too high, or if I placed anything too low, let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. I've been Spoons Rattling. Bye-bye!